my documentary. I believe it was a Sunday that I did it, and I was leaving church, and I was so nervous, and knowing that the time was really winding down, and I had been sharing with so many people that I was going to be releasing a documentary, so people were asking me about it. And I remember I was getting in my car after service, and a friend of mine, she said, hey, do you want to do a watch party? I was like, hey girl, no, I sure don't. I don't want to do nobody's watch party, because what I wanted to do was go home, go to my room, shelter in place, turn my phone on airplane mode, and I don't know, I just was afraid of what the feedback was going to be. Of course, if you're sharing a story that's so vulnerable, you're considering like, well, you know, what are people going to say about this? Like, there were so many different thoughts that were going through my mind. But I get home, and after a few hours, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just going to drive myself crazy sitting at home waiting for everybody to watch this documentary and give me their feedback. So I end up calling that friend back, and I go to her house, and she has it all ready, and they just let me be me and awkward and just like shrink back and watch them, you know, all watch this documentary. And it was a beautiful experience. I felt really supported. That was amazing. And then as the weeks went on, people continued to watch, and I was super surprised at the amount of people that began to inbox me, and I was slightly overwhelmed, if I'm being honest. I had so many people inboxing me details of their violations, and I have been through a bunch of things. Like, I've experienced multiple violations, but I was so surprised and taken back by the amount of people that experience these forms of trauma that they have never shared. And it was honestly an honor. And why do I say that? Because I feel like if anybody decides that they want to share their story, it takes a lot of courage to do that. I also know that it's easier to share your story with a stranger before you do with a family member. And so in some ways I felt like, wow, me being transparent about my story opened up, you know, this door for someone to share with me their story that they probably have never shared with anybody else. And so that was really amazing. And it made me feel like all the trouble that I had gone through doing the documentary was worth it, because although there were a lot of really great moments, sharing my story was not a hard thing for me to do at that point, because I had been really open about what I have experienced with close people that I loved. But there were people who were not really excited about the idea of me sharing my story for one reason or the other. But hearing the feedback from people and kind of, you know, how I in some way encouraged them or made them feel like they weren't the only ones who had experienced something really was amazing to me. And so, you know, that was something that happened post documentary. I remember there was this guy on Instagram that sends me these lyrics on SoundCloud. He like sent me like an audio, and so he's like, hey, I would really like for you to listen to this. And so he didn't look like, and I do air quotes if you're listening to this, but he didn't look like the person that would be violated, right? And so I plan on dismantling what people who get violated look like. But he shares this audio, and I'm listening to him, and in between one of the verses, he said that he lost his virginity to an aunt, someone that was over 20 years older than him. And so I was blown away that he would even share that. And I understood that there are different expressions of people sharing their story and finding ways to, you know, have courage to heal and things like that. And so that was some of the experiences that I had. But one of the biggest things, honestly, and the most surprising things for me is that in some ways I felt like when I released this documentary, like I arrived, like I'm here, I healed, like I'm good now. And I was in for a rude awakening when the Lord decided to let me know, like, no, daughter, your healing is in layers and levels. And so I feel like ever since then, and honestly during the month of March, when I usually prepared to share more about my story, the Lord really begins to refine and take me to new places and highlight areas of my life that have still not healed or been surrendered to Him as a result of the things that I've experienced. And that has been beautiful, because I imagine God, all knowing as He is, that if He had presented everything that I needed to heal from at one time, I would have quit. I wouldn't have done it all at one time. Like, there's no way I would have been able to endure that. And so, you know, I felt defeated at some points, but then I was like, you know what, like God knows what he's doing, and layers is what's gonna work for me. And so in the midst of that, so there's this thing that happens when you experience some form of trauma, that like your memory goes into your brain goes into like this protective mode. And so there are moments where people will have memory recalls, and things that they have experienced just come back into their mind like a flood. And so I have been able to remember even more things that have happened to me, and have been able to surrender those things to the Lord. And so I know that at some point I will end up doing another documentary where I'm able to share even more things that I've remembered, and not only that, but more things that I have not had the courage to share, or that I did not have the courage to share. Those are kind of like my post-documentary experiences. They've been amazing. They've been a